I can't talk too long. I gotta poo.
Oh.
Welcome to In-Frame Out's Year in Film, where we take stock of 12 months of spectacular cinema and unfortunate rubbish. To paraphrase and conflate the lyrics of both Poison and Outcast, for every rose, there's a thorn that smells of poo-poo. We've shown you the best of the best and settled on 10 diamonds to take us out of the decade. Now let's dig deep, suck it up and dive on the grenade as we count down entries 5 through 1 of the worst films of 2019.
Oh, this isn't good. Oh, it's not good.
You're out of line.
Expecting nuance from the man who once used a gigantic spewing toilet as a stage backdrop while yelling homophobic slurs at an audience is maybe a fool's errand, but even by the low standards set by the threat of a Fred Durst film, The Fanatic is inexplicable. Ableism is the order of the day, as autism is routinely lumped in with every creepy stalker trope in this low-effort psychodrama. What's most repellent about this nonsensical, barely plotted procession of stabs at the very soul of anyone not deemed neurologically typical is that none of this seems to be by mistake. This isn't in any way a well-intentioned work that misses the mark, or an attempt at representation that backfired horrifically. There's something deeply cruel and sickeningly calculated by the lengths The Fanatic goes to tell you just how much hate it has in its heart for people on the spectrum. For what it's worth, John Travolta continues his recent trend of trying remarkably hard to make champagne out of sewer water, with a go-for-broke display of committed lunacy that tries to find a pulse in this hunk of putrid meat. By the crass, mean-spirited conclusion, you'll be praying for the golden age of 90s Renaissance Travolta and a nail in the coffin of Fred Durst's creative ambitions. Anemic, agonizingly laboured, and ugly in both its politics and execution, Rambo Last Blood is missing everything and anything a fan of this franchise could want. The lean survivalist drama First Blood? No. The ridiculous but cathartic pivot to gung-ho silliness of parts 2 and 3? No. What about the head-exploding grindhouse warfare of the eponymous fourth go-around? If only. Instead, this long-in-the-tooth, short-on-purpose return to the fray is bogged down somewhere between horrendously written drawls and dog-whistling ultra-right-wing condemnations of all things south of the border. Part remake of Taken, part scaremongering cautionary tale about why young women should always listen to their elders, the first hour is miserable, misguided, and devoid of memorable moments, with a weird You Would Never Really Hear ripoff for good measure. The final extended maelstrom of head-chopping, booby-trapped action is a welcome reprieve from the constipated bloat that precedes it, but even here, much of what's happening is obscured by erratic editing and an abundance of CGI blood in place of some good old-fashioned gore. As for the ending, how does this series draw to a close? With a 5-minute greatest hits montage of John Rambo's biggest moments, some of which are from the film we're still technically watching. Stallone may have brought Rocky back from the dead with a new lease of life, but Rambo here is dead on arrival without so much as some schlock to show for it. If you told me this was a student project that was laughed out of filmmaking 101, I wouldn't question it. Christ, if you told me this was made as part of a Faustian pact in exchange for the ability to spell the word entertainment, I'd believe that. Domino is just that incompetent. Hideous to look at, paced with all the urgency of a lobotomized sloth trying to hold in a shart, and acted with all the nuance of a nursery school recital of an episode of Homeland, I can only imagine this was released as some sort of write-down to clear it off the studio's balance sheet. Not only can I not tell you a single thing I liked about this crusty sock of an experience, I'd struggle to tell you anything about it beyond its pulverizing, plain-faced craptasticness. So, to what sure-to-be novice filmmaker do we owe thanks for this tin-eared, soap opera-looking war on reasonable thought? Let me just see here. Brian De Palma. Brian De Palma? After Carrie, Dressed to Kill, Blowout, Body Double, The Untouchables, Casualties of War, Mission Impossible, this isn't a fall from grace, it's a concrete parachute skydive into abject awfulness.
Whee! Oh, for the love of God! Somebody get the jaws of life!
It's a testament to former glories that this'll be remembered as a blemish on a brilliant career, but good God does it leave an unavoidable skid mark right at the top of that IMDb page.
Alright, have any of you ever seen a dead body that's been in the sun for 3 weeks? No. Alright, take a look at this then.
The only vaguely positive thing I can think to say about this near unwatchable wank is that Mads Mikkelsen probably paid off a chunk of his mortgage with the money he made from it. Mikkelsen yawns his way through this cringing, slimy attempt at pulpy action in a cinematic vape cloud of cliches, copy-paste one-liners, and snot-stained apathy. Like a mosh pit overdosing on sleeping pills, scenes lumber and collide rather than following any semblance of purpose. Visually, it's somewhere between desaturated porridge and reading a water-damaged issue of Punisher while fighting off a bad case of pink eye. What little energy anyone can muster gets channeled into the kind of tired, sexist shtick that went out of style with the mullet, while the rank garglings of villains and heroes alike barely elicit as much as an eye roll. It all feels like Sin City fanfiction as written by an unimaginative 12-year-old whose favourite book is the not safe for work section of Reddit. Polar leaves an aftertaste so nauseatingly unpleasant, there's only one jar of swill released this year that overpowers its lingering bitterness.
Our organizations have a long-standing relationship. They're old friends of mine, and they've requested your assistance with a giant problem.
Yeah? What's that?
Giants. Ha ha ha!
Studio interference seems to be the go-to sigh we let out whenever a major project doesn't come together cohesively. Whether or not that's the cause of Hellboy's woes would certainly explain the technical, editorial, and tonal failings of this film, but it also distracts from a more salient point. If the special effects were up to snuff, if the makeup didn't look like Quentin Tarantino dressed as a hemorrhoid, if it wasn't edited by a raccoon with a lawnmower, if there was more than one vaguely interesting location or creature design beyond what I'm currently showing, on a fundamental molecular level, it'd still be sour, steaming dreck. Where Del Toro's original films were filled with jovial whimsy, gothic horror, and steampunk magical realism, the latest attempt at Hellboy is a soulless void lacking warming light or curious darkness. The lore is doled out with the disinterested slurring of a drunken malcontent, the plot would be unintelligible if it wasn't so one-note, and I'd describe the characters as cardboard, but that would be doing cardboard a disservice. This is like cardboard soaked through with piss until everything falls through the sodden, dripping base. We're constantly shoved from comedy that isn't funny, to horror that isn't scary, onto sci-fi that isn't intriguing, and winding up with drama that is utterly devoid of anything to give the slightest hint of a shit about. A film this terrible, this repugnant in execution and concept, is the sinking brick that raises the water for everything else in the pool. As a reboot, it doesn't even get started. As a remake, it offers nothing while gouging away at the originals. As an adaptation of a long-running series of comics, it doesn't stand on its own or honour its heritage. And after a couple of hours feeling my will to live pried from my very bones, Hellboy is In Frame Out's worst film of 2019. And those were our bottom 5 worst films of the year. And with that, we close the book on 2019. Special shout out to our Patreon producers Nicholas Lair Revere, Jennifer C, and Claire MD, and a copy of Starship Troopers on Blu-ray for all these patrons who support the channel. For anyone who's missed any of the best or worst of the year videos, there's a link in the description below with a handy playlist of all of them, as well as a link to our Patreon, where you can sign up to our film club, your name in the credits, additional reviews, or just $1 or $2 in support of the channel. We'll be back in a few weeks with our regularly scheduled programming. Until then, this is In Frame Out.